in our vehicles and in a fairly organized manner. A couple things I wanted to mention. There was nothing that irritates me more than going to these speeches and hearing people all over the background. I don't know if it says more for the presenters yesterday and today or the crowd. I think it's a relationship. You know, there was none of that going on here, and I'm so thankful. I appreciate that. And it says a lot for Jim Gainke. I mean, there was nobody talking, nobody nodding.
I was afraid you were going to say like that, and it was me.
Okay, I've got a couple other things. It was John Wilson. I think I have to mention that for those of us that knew him. I can't help but think what he would have thought of this. He's the one that introduced me to Jim Gainke. So, let's see. One other thing I want to say, and I hope I do good on this. Nancy Carlson, our next speaker, the anthropologist, their personal life has been consumed by something here recently. Their 20-something-year-old daughter has been diagnosed with cancer. So you can imagine their life is consumed with that. And she graciously still came today to present. So you can reach out and harm and give them a little confidence or whatever. Thank you. That would be appreciated. So, Nancy Carlson.
Glad to be here. I think this is a very exciting symposium, and I'm going to try to add another dimension to the Burro Canyon. Can you hear me a little better now, or no? Okay. I know Bruce has worked very hard on this, and I thought this morning when I walked out of my hotel room, I thought he went a little over the top, because when I looked at the carpet in our hotel room hallway, it had oak leaves and acorns, so I thought he went really over the top. To talk about Native American presence in the area, I had to research sites and surveys that have been previously done since I had not been to Burro Canyon. The Native cultures cover a fairly broad area, and I have chosen to talk about all of Nebraska Native history with the emphasis on the southwest corner of Nebraska. Archaeologists determine the presence and lifestyles of former people based on the artifacts and features that they have left behind. And we also tap the knowledge of climatologists, geologists, and other professionals to more clearly understand the forces affecting the people that live here. So this symposium is a very good example of acquiring information from a lot of different professional resources. Native Americans did not live just one way throughout all time. They moved in and out of areas and evolved through thousands of years that they have been in Nebraska. To help explain this, they have been classified into time periods. Each time period had similar lifestyles and tools. A lot of the changes and adaptations occurred because the climatic changes, which also affected the plants and animals that these people depended upon. This time chart shows the 6 broad time periods that were present in Nebraska. The earliest is the Paleo-Indian period. This period ranges from 12,000 years before present, and actually it extends to quite a bit earlier than that, as I'll talk about in a little bit, to about 8,000 years ago. These were nomadic hunters hunting mammoth and ancient bison. They used spears, and they maybe gathered some wild plants. They probably lived in skin tents. The main artifacts that we have left from them are these wonderfully worked flint-work spear points. And as they kind of go from the Clovis, which is the oldest, down to some of the youngest. And any one of those could have been found out in the Burro Canyon area. These people traveled over very wide areas, and so it's very hard to find these remnants. The next group is the Archaic period, which was from 8,000 years ago to about 2,000 years ago. Here they used spears, and they also used the atlatl, which is the spear thrower, and is You can see it right there, kind of showing how that they worked that. These were nomadic hunter-gatherers. They used the bison, deer, and antelope is what they hunted. I should have mentioned before, in the Paleo period, towards the end of the period, the bison and the mammoth had become extinct, and the bison had become more like their smaller modern descendants. So there was a great climatic change between the Paleo period to the Archaic period. These people started to depend more upon wild seeds, roots, and berries. And this was also a significant transitional period to the post-glacial environment. But most of the sites for this are very deeply buried, and some examples of that was along Medicine Creek, which many of you are familiar with. And these sites were located 30 to 50 feet below the surface in wind-blown lusts. So if you find archaic things, it's usually because of erosion and that has uncovered them. These are Logan Creek points, and as you can see, these different areas are called phases, and this Logan Creek phase extends down into where Burr Oak Canyon would be. So it is possible that we could find out in that area Logan Creek points. The next phase is the woodland or the early ceramic. This was from 2000 to about 1100 years ago. This is a period of great change for these people also. This was where they introduced ceramics. The bow and arrow was introduced in this time period, and they actually started living in little villages, at least part of the time. They lived in small, shallow pit houses, but it was a very small group of their villages, probably only maybe 3 or 4 core families in a village. At this point, you can see down here the Keith phase was one that would have extended down into where Burr Oak Canyon was. And they had cord roughened pottery is one of their trademarks of that phase. And I was very lucky yesterday. Don Cruz brought some of artifacts that he had found quite a few years ago from Burr Oak Canyon. And there was a couple of cord roughened pieces of pottery in that. So those could date almost back to this 2,000 years ago. And that pottery and other artifacts are over on the table to the south, along with some other things I'll talk about in a minute. These people lived on hilltops, on river terraces, and in rock shelters. And when we looked at Jim's photograph of the Burr Oak Canyon, you could see why people would maybe want to live in that area. The next time period is the Central Plains tradition. These were hunter horticulturists. They were really starting to grow a lot of maize at this period. They had large square earth lodges, square earth lodges. They started to live in quite large villages. There was a lot of increasing population during this time period, and it was a period of abundance for them during the first part of this time period, which was from 1100 to 500 years before present. From about 700 to 500 years before present, however, this whole area basically cleared out because of droughts. This model shows a little bit from Don Blakesley's model. It shows the area down here where Burr Oak Canyon was for that period in there. They were over 25% less rain than normal, and as you know, there's not a lot of rain down here anyhow, so this would have been quite a barren region, except